Today's show is brought to you by our Extra Mile community on Patreon and mpb.com for quality used camera kit with a guarantee. Buy, sell, trade and create with mpb.com. I had a note from Robin Chun. It's actually one of the comments to last week's show, the one that we called "And Your Superpower Is... Enjoy the interview with Victor Hubner," said Robin. Really related to his comment about the camera being a superpower. "I may not wear a cape," says Robin, "but I feel like I have a superpower when I'm on a dedicated photo walk." I liked that. And I'm going to find a picture just to start my photo walk today. And I'm going to go for a sub-theme today, a sub-theme or a theme of my photos anyway, a theme of my sketchbook pictures. I've noticed of late as the grasses have grown, as the lush greens are consuming of foliage, that is, and hogweed and ivy and any other nature of wild plant you can think of, how much it's consuming man-made items such as posts, and there's one here straight away. I'm quite sure why this post is here. It's in the middle of I'm up a path, as I usually am on my photo walks. No Barney today. Again, we didn't walk with him on Wednesday, and I'm not walking with him today. The only reason is it's half term, and the family they've sort of we've got Barney, we're doing the walks. So yeah, they're doing the Barney thing this week. Anyway, here's this post. Let me, it's consumed by weeds and long grasses around it. 1/25 f4, 1000 ISO. It's quite dark here. And there we go. A sketchbooker to start my walk.
Today on the Photo Walk.
So, what's on the show? Have you heard of the concept called a duvet day? Yeah, I've heard of a concept called a duvet day. I've taken a couple in my life. Not officially, Neil, don't tell the boss. It's also called a doona day in Australia land, or it's a comforter, isn't it? A duvet, a comforter in America land and Canada land. There's various other words for it, but for the sake of description, can I just call it, or context, lightly, can I just call it a duvet day for this, where you're allowed to call into work and just say, boss, I don't fancy it today. It's spreadsheet day and I can't be doing that today. I'm going back to bed, pulling the duvet over my head, and the boss is supposed to say, no worries at all. You're allowed to have as many as your company allows you. 1, 2, 4. What are you talking about, Neil? My boss would never believe in the duvet day concept. But it was invented, I looked this up, and it was invented in 1997. And I don't know why I didn't consider it might be, but it's actually a British invention by a PR company from the Shires of England land. And they introduced it to allow employees ad hoc time off that wasn't pre-planned. Well, today on the show, a letter about why it might be worth fighting the temptations of a duvet day when it comes to getting up early to go and make pictures anyway. And I know we shouldn't, also on the show, I know we shouldn't covet kit, but boy, do I have a collection of amazing pictures and super inspirational words from Sicily today. A new feature starts with the beginning of the month, and it's very much does what it says on the tin feature. I couldn't think of a better title, so I've just called it the feature, roughly in the middle of the show, like that third planet from the sun thing? I don't know, because I honestly couldn't think of a better title, and it describes it perfectly. And it's obvious what the feature will be today, because it's the first Friday of the month, which means new assignment day. But as the month proceeds, you're going to meet some new friends and old friends taking the reins for 5 to 15 minutes of the show on various themes. Next week, it's street. But it's roughly, as I say, in the middle, probably not exactly. Today also, my blood pressure rises slightly with the term Mickey Mouse photography, but I'm calmed by some more thoughts from Africa.
The Photo Walk.
Our guest... Well, if Andy Warhol from the pop art movement had been a food photographer, he would have shot in the style of my guest today. Of that I am sure. Though there's a sort of chicken and egg thing going on here in terms of Andy Warhol perhaps inspiring my guest to shoot the way that he does, but put that law of causality to one side conveniently for the moment. But yes, if Warhol had wanted somebody to launch a food line for him, I can say with a degree of confidence that he may well have picked up the phone and called Scott Chathinio. Hello, Scott. Andy Warhol here. You know that Campbell's soup cans picture, the one I made in the early 60s? Oh, yes, I'm vaguely familiar with it. Well, I'm launching my own soup, are you? Yes, I am. And I need somebody to photograph the ad campaign. Something big and bold and colourful and a bit like, I don't know, those Marilyn pictures I did. Oh, I know the one. Yes, I'm the photographer for you. Now, I've been watching a YouTube channel for a while now featuring the work and thoughts and the sheer honesty of Scott Chathinio. He is a food photographer, a very, very good food photographer. Now, out the traps, I've photographed some food. I've actually made a little money photographing food, little being the applicably correct amount. So I wouldn't call myself a food photographer. And up until lockdown, well, nor would Scott Chathinio. And I don't want to do a spoiler, but you're going to, aren't you, Neil? Yes, just a little. But to whet your appetite, which is very apposite when we're talking about food, of course, using a Warholism, it's most certainly a tomato soup for the soul story. And if you've never heard of the chicken soup for the soul concept, then that'll mean nothing to you. But by the by, the spoiler. Whilst many people during lockdown wondered what on earth they were going to do with this uninvited, sudden, and for many, unwanted, for most unwanted, sudden freedom from earning a living, certainly creatives at any rate, and I'll include myself in that. Well, Scott took home from his studio one camera, one lens, one light, and some colourful paper backdrops, not realising what he was about to do was going to entirely change his life. And if that all sounds very dramatic, that's because, well, it was.
Literally the week before the pandemic, I was in Chipping Norton and I was reading an article about pop art, and my partner was like, if you like pop art so much, why don't you just create work that looks like that instead of what you're doing, which doesn't make you happy?
It's the Photowalk. You and I making some pictures with our cameras or smartphones, sketchbooking our walk together, enjoying the letters and inspirational stories you sent in. It's a show for photographers of all flavours. It's a show for those who like walking. It's a show for explorers and those who find escapism and peace away from the noise, with a spring in your step and a picture to remind you of where that footprint was left. All made possible by our extra milers and mpb.com, which is a great way to buy and sell and trade used camera gear online. And I know this because I use them myself to buy quality, new-to-me kit, like lenses, camera bodies and other accessories. If you're buying, you get peace of mind with a 6-month guarantee, and if you're trading or selling, MPB will send a courier to pick up your kit on the day you specify, and once it's arrived back at their warehouse and they've gone through the checks to make sure it's all been graded properly, you will get paid direct into your account quickly. mpb.com is a very easy to use website, and it's helping photographers to buy quality used kit or sell gear that we no longer need to free up some cash and give others a chance to make their stories. Go to mpb.com and there will be a link on today's show page. Right, checklist out. Coffee and Garibaldi's, check. Walking boots, check. A copy of a book called Simplicity. What? That'll become clearer later on. Let's walk.
I think I'm walking along another one of those paths that it's going to be inaccessible in the next month. I was going to say or two, probably before that, maybe coming weeks. But it's lovely. Oh, wow. In the middle of nowhere. Another man-made thing here, a footpath sign that that's being consumed. It looks like it's been pushed over by the weight of plants. Let me get a picture. I've come a bit more out into the open here, so shutter speed 1/2/5, ISO back down to a 160 f4. I'm using my 100V today, my Fujifilm 100V. There we go. Another sketchbooker to start the day. So letters. First letter of the day. We're starting with a good friend of the show from Australia land, also an extra miler. Actually, he did May's 15 minutes talk about his photography in our live Zoom show. Incidentally, stroke on that note, stroke note to self, the next live Zoom is Tuesday 6th of June, and it starts at 8 p.m. UK time, afternoon for our American friends and Canadian friends, the breakfast show if you're in Australia and New Zealand, evening cocktail for most of Europe, and Lord only knows what time if you live on the Isle of Wight. They're still back in 1962. So from Peter, oh no, hang on Peter, sorry. Nettles. Ooh, fierce nettles too. So from Peter Turnbull of the Beach. Hi Neil, I was listening to last week's Extra Mile as I headed west this morning on my way to one of the mines that I shoot at. The topic of whether shooting for money destroys your passion to photograph for a hobby, or if you can keep the two separate, came up. As you know, I keep my surf photography separate from work, and that seems to keep me going. At least I thought it did. Last week, I'd agreed to meet a mate at our favourite beach to shoot a major surf contest. I'd already bailed on him twice earlier in the week, work commitments being my excuse, so I was pretty keen to get back down there into those dunes. However, 4:30, Saturday morning rolled around, the alarm went off, and I thought, do I really want this? I have to get out of my warm bed, drive an hour to the beach, stand there in whatever temperature, and shoot the same. Peter, when you say whatever temperature, by the way, I've just looked at this week's forecast for your part of the world, and it's somewhere between 17 and 23 degrees, which for a Brit, of course, is, that's full on. Well, it's DEFCON full on summertime. That is break out the knotted handkerchiefs on head temperature. Sitting on a beach for a Brit starts at about 8 degrees, I think, doesn't it? Wearing a duffel coat, complaining about eating foreign food whilst consuming leftover Italian pizza for breakfast. Anyway, Peter says, sorry, you'll get me started. Then I come back with several hundred images, he said, if I go to this thing to edit on top of all the work that I've already got. It really didn't seem that appealing. However, I managed to drag myself out of bed, more from guilt than anything, and sat in my favourite chair, running all the pros and cons through my mind. Eventually, I begrudgingly picked up my camera and headed south. And boy, I'm glad I did. See? This story has a happy ending. We're starting with Disneyfication. The weather, says Pete. Can I call you Pete? Usually in Australia, you just add an O, don't you? Pete-O it would be. Neil-O, Dave-O, Pete-O. The weather, says Pete-O, was so-so. The waves small, and the action, a bit slow to start with. But as I stood on the sand next to my mate, we chatted. I took photographs of birds, and we shot the occasional surfer. Then I met another shooter who was a former World Surf League photographer. We chatted about the past, the present, and the future of surfing. He told us stories from an insider's perspective, which is fascinating, and we chatted about gear. Eventually we parted ways and headed off to grab a bite to eat. And in the end, I walked away with some reasonable shots, actually, of gulls and surfers. And moreover, some great conversations had with like-minded folks. Well worth the effort of dragging myself out of bed. Another mate of mine is going through the lost mojo phase, sick of shooting the same, fed up with social media and all the other gripes of life and lost loves. And when he told me, I thought, gee, that must be tough. But that'll never happen to me. But it can, and it did, albeit momentarily. I guess the trick is just to make sure you have something to commit to and go out, make the first steps and just do it. I'm now going to reach out to my mate and drag him kicking and screaming if I need to shoot something new, even if we don't come away with a cracker or any shots for that matter. Just the act of getting out and talking to like-minded souls is enough to breathe life back into your passion. I've attached a couple of shots on the weekend for your viewing pleasure. Thanks for all you do, Neil. The podcasts are a weekly must-do for me and keep me entertained on my regular long drives. That's a not-so-subtle hint to make them as long as you like. I'll come back to that in a moment. Cheers from down under, Pete-O, or Pete, of the Turnbull province of Australia land. Just turn left at Kangaroo Point. There we go, Pete's official business address, if you want to write to him. And if you're thinking, oh, Roo Point, Neil, come on, that's a bit cliche. It's not, it's a real place in Brizzy, where Pete-O, no doubt, can be found grazing with his camera. Pete, you make some excellent points there. You know, we are really very lucky, and I say this week after week after week after week. I know that, but repeats come free with this show. But we are fortunate, yes, to enjoy the gift of walking and making pictures. That escapism from noise is a phrase I think I've also used. And it exists, doesn't it? As you look into that, I know some people look on the back of their cameras, that's fine too, or your iPhones. But for me, looking into that eyepiece, you do enter, and if it sounds a bit melodramatic, I apologise, but you do enter a different world. It does. I find that it takes me out of the noise and the world and the accountant's letters. Don't know why I picked on that one in particular, but looking through that eyepiece, that does it for me. It's a magic box, isn't it, that we escape into. Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. I could live inside that little box there, looking through the eyepiece. I tried explaining the fact that I thought it was some kind of magic box to my kids recently, and they just looked at me. Have you been sniffing the fixer again, Dad? But like anything, there comes a time where you might think, oh, I'm not feeling this today, or this week, or this month. And those are the moments, I think, not to be harsh on yourself, not to push it. And maybe, I think there's a lesson in what Peter said here in his letter, maybe just to meet a friend. Get out there, meet a friend, walk, take your camera, just in case. It is different, of course, when you're being paid to do this, the photographer's block thing, or debate that is, but I don't, and I've never subscribed to this idea that being paid for what you love can suddenly strip the lacquer from it. It does make things different. There is a reality in that, and you do sometimes need to be brave enough to open a new door in your work corridor, and it can be all-consuming at times. I entirely appreciate that. I mean, I have my moments too. Mine will be at weddings and social events where that I'm photographing, where I wonder, how did I get here? What am I doing here? Is this really my calling? You know, when the rain is I'll bleep it out. When the rain is pitching down on my creative parade, and I'm thinking, oh, I'd rather be watching the Saturday matinee with the kids. And if any photographer says they're always in the sunny uplands and the world is full of tit-tot flavoured awesome blueberry muffins every time you press the shutter button, then they are probably sniffing the fixer as well. You can't always enjoy the ride. The grass is not always greener. The photographic fixer can't escape exhaustion forever. And that is my 2 pennyworth. But Pete, your pictures are amazing. 3 surfers and then a surprise appearance by a gull. Just shooting the breeze in the way that gulls shoot the breeze, I'm sure. There's a real skill photographing surfers, waiting for the right moment. Just at the top of, what do you call it, when the wave breaks? There's a word for it, isn't there? Breaker, Neil? No, there's another word. There's a funnel, and there's the, oh, please don't, Neil, you don't really understand surfing. But I do know what I like when I look at a surfing picture. And Pete's pictures are terrific. And they'll be on the show page today, all 4. And I tell you what, they make me pine. They do, for Oz. And we're hopefully coming back as a family for a month or maybe just a bit less. Not quite sure. We've got to break it to Barney yet in 2025, which is far, 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 far too long. But away, that is. But I'm really looking forward to it. As for length of show, it's becoming the regular debate on this programme. I feel I need to just humour those who lightly complain about it by mentioning it every now and then in a I'm listening but not quite sure what to do about it way. Anyway, about those kangaroos, as Hugh Grant's line should have gone in that movie. Just now, the Chiff Chaff, the famous Chiff Chaff from a couple of weeks ago, was right above me, and he or she sounded none too pleased with where I was. And I thought, have you got a nest there, Mr. or Mrs. Chiff Chaff? And they've gone now. It's wonderful. I should have reached for my recorder. Maybe they'll make a reappearance. Now I'm going to be careful here. Just because. Exodus 2017, hang about, Neil. I didn't sign up for this. Please tell me you've not dragged along a pulpit today. I tell you what, you can get a lot in the back of the boot or the trunk of a Sportage, but probably not a full-size church pulpit. Exodus 2017, you shall not covet your neighbour's house. You shall not covet your neighbour's wife or his male servant or his female servant or his ox or his donkey, or anything that is your neighbour's, including his Leica M10 monochrome. But I tell you what, it's becoming harder not to. This letter from Morris Webster is pulling me far too close to the confessional. Forgive me, Father. My wife does not know of the box I'm hiding beneath the bed in a Tesco carrier bag. Hi, Neil. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to your recent wanderings in Austria, the extra mile interview too with Alex Frederickson, and the fascinating interview on the Photowalk with Hilary Roberts, episode 376. It was an absolute joy to chat with Hilary. Thoroughly enjoyed talking about it was history. It was talking about photography, photographers, curating exhibitions, curating collections. It was a different glimpse into the world of making pictures, alternative to that we usually discuss. I really enjoyed my time with Hilary. I'll leave a link on the show page today so you can check back in with that particular episode. As always, thank you for creating such wonderful productions. They provide a perfect soundtrack as I exercise on the turbo trainer or walk the streets with camera in hand. The latter's definitely more enjoyable of the two, I'm sure it is. I've started on the Stairmaster once more in my attempt to make bikini size this summer. It's blooming hard going. So I know what you mean about and I have to say this in a certain inflection, I know what you mean about being on the turbo trainer, because that is the way I feel on this thing. It's about half an hour, maybe 40 minutes if I'm feeling particularly athletic. But they are rescued by Van Neistat, Mally Davis, and or various podcasts and YouTube channels. It's very soul-destroying on the Stairmaster, climbing 70 to 100 imaginary floors and having absolutely no view at the end of it. Anyway, says Morris, whilst you were yomping up and down the lumps and bumps of Austria, no doubt humming various songs from The Sound of Music, how did you know? Were you listening at the trees? The lovely Mrs. W and I had ventured further south to the charming island of Sicily to explore the historic city of Palermo. Now, how do you say Palermo? Because it's said by so many people in different ways. I checked into YouTube just to make sure I was saying it the right way. Even all the Italians on the channels were saying it in very different very different ways. But my desire to add to my portfolio of black and white images led me to the grittier parts of the city. I've always wanted to go to Sicily. It looks like an amazing island. And Palermo, in particular from your photographs, that's made me even keener to book the airfare. And specifically, he says, the numerous street markets, they were filled with photogenic characters, energy, sights, sounds, smells and human interaction, which always seems to embody the character of a city and its residents. A perfect canvas for the documentary photographs I enjoy making. I've attached below a few images which I hope convey the feel of this wonderful city, all captured on the Leica M10 monochrome. Remember, Neil, thou shalt not... Yeah, I know. Morris, they are super pictures, incredible. I don't believe I'm shoehorning. And if I am, I only partly apologise, but your pictures of the market scenes in particular, that is one of the things I love most about photographing in the Gambia, in Banjul's Albert Market, which is one of those places, if you are going to go on the retreat, and I've used this phrase, but I'll use it again, it is one of those places that, has all of life. But these pictures of yours show exactly that. I love your photograph. It'll be on the show page of the market trader just walking away, nonchalant fashion, with the empty fruit boxes just by his side, hopefully after a successful day. And then the trader that's chopping, well, first of all, I thought it might be garlic, but then I spied some celery, so it's probably celery, isn't it? And then I absolutely LOVE, the very normal, perhaps actually you could describe it as an ugly picture in terms of the scene, that is, of a big dumpster. And then there's a tabby cat just in front of the dumpster. Around the bin there's stuff that's just been cast on the floor because either the dumpster's overflowing there, it looks like it possibly is, or people just can't be bothered to put their plastic bags of garbage lifted into the bin itself. But in front there's a tabby just cleaning her paws, and I love that. It was a really lovely observation in an otherwise quite ugly scene. And there's all the graffiti on the wall as well, just behind it. It's the rough with the smooth, isn't it? The real life next to the Instagram life. The grit over the glorious. Superb. Simply superb. Thank you for your letter, and your pictures are most certainly all on the show page today, with links to more of Morris's work as well. Right, my guest. What I am most inspired about my guest today and his story is that Scott Chathinio found his life calling at the most difficult of times. Already he was in a business beating against the wind of Euro change, courtesy of that word that starts with B and R, ends with a T and has exit, ominously placed in the middle. Just when it looked like he might benefit from a sticky plaster applied to hold things in place for a little longer, along came the next wave of just what you didn't order for Easter.
From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
The entire state of California ordered to stay at home. That's 40 million people.
This is a time when we must all make sacrifices.
Penalties may include up to a year in jail.
We direct a statewide order for people to stay at home.
That thing that shall not be mentioned is at the very epicenter of this tale. Now, I enjoyed my chat with Scott immeasurably because I got to learn and talk about YouTube. And as I start to accelerate my plans for YouTube activity for this podcast, there was an element of self-indulgence in that part of the conversation. But I also got a serving of reality, as you're about to hear, and I got to learn about, the power, and it is a power, of simplicity. What's one of my favourite books that I own? Would it be Simplicity, Neil, by Edward de Bono? Oh, you must be looking over my shoulder in the office. Yes, it is. And I didn't ask, but my conversation with Scott today had me thinking that perhaps Scott's got that book as well. This professor's book isn't just about simple stuff working. It's about applying simplicity as a concept in your life. And as the pandemic struck, Scott retreated to his house with one camera, one lens, and one light, and some colour papers, as I said. And he set about completely reinventing himself during a time of total upheaval mentally, I think, for just so many people. And in doing so, he ticked off Edward de Bono's 6th rule of simplicity. Out of 10, there's 10. And it's a law that says you need to be prepared to start over again. Sometimes a blank page and zero base is better than modification. It's a chat in 2 halves, and here's part 1 of my conversation with Scott Chathinio.
Scott, it's always surprising, still to me, that when I ask some guest to come on the show that they say, "Oh, I've listened to that a few times." And it seems we've graced your ears during, well, not walks of your own, but drives.
Yes, yeah. I often have the podcast on whilst I'm sort of driving around Leicester. There's a bit of background sort of listening as I'm going along. It's quite calming to listen to.
And what, you find speech calming to listen to?
Well, yeah, not all speech. Some podcasts perhaps might get me a bit riled up. But yes, yours is particularly calming, which I quite like. It's nice. Well,
no, that's good. That's the way it's designed to be. I listen to LBC quite a lot when I'm driving around, and I have to say that sends me into a fit of rage quite often. Note to self, don't listen to phone-ins.
Yes.
You are, I think, one of those people I turn to when I need to watch somebody talk with integrity and honesty. And some of those words are very inspirational. Some of the thoughts you have are a little dark, but always they are from an angle of believability. And 8 months ago, I think it was about 8, you made a very honest film called My Photography Business Failed. It isn't the business you have now, it was the commercial portrait business you had before. But in this new world of look at meism, I thought that was a very honest film to make. Was it tricky? Did you feel a bit awkward having to bear all?
No, not particularly, actually. I don't find it tricky to talk about my shortcomings. And I guess part of the reason for that is because I now have a successful business. Perhaps if it had been a failure and nothing had come out the other side, it'd be different. But I think having the benefits of now having a more successful photography career, it's easier to talk about the failings. Yeah. And it's definitely, like you said, it's not something you see much of. And when things are going wrong, you can feel quite isolated. So a lot of the sort of motivation to make that video was to let other people know that it does go wrong.
Well, there is a lot in social media, isn't it? I call it humble bragging. It's not my own invention. It's a phrase I heard before, but I've adopted that as something I see a lot of. You know, you ask a question in a forum and you get back straight away somebody saying, "Oh, it's going really well. I've got 89 bookings and I win the lottery next week." Whilst you're not hoping people are going to necessarily come back and say, "Life's grim," there is a refreshing side to actually hearing honesty on social media, isn't there?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it always runs the risk of becoming very depressing.
Yeah, but I don't
talk about the negatives. But
but I've never watched one of your films and felt that it's necessarily negative. I've always thought that the truth of what you say, and you say it like it is very refreshing.
Yeah, it's so difficult because I'm very lucky that I have 2 businesses, and I'm known as Tin House Studios on YouTube and for my educational platform. But my other business is under my own name, where I work as a photographer. So the 2 don't really meet. I don't think I'd do the same thing if I was using my name on YouTube. I wouldn't want clients to be seeing that. So I wouldn't want my agent to see that.
Right.
And I think that affords me that freedom. Whereas, if I was using my own name on all social media platforms, it'd make it a little bit more tricky for me to be quite as open and honest and perhaps sharing the bad things.
But surely your agent has watched your YouTube channel.
Well, I've actually just changed agents a week ago.
Right.
I mean, obviously it's been in the pipeline for a long time, but officially it's kind of out that I changed agent a week ago.
Right.
My previous agent, I don't think she'd ever seen it. She knew I had it, and we had a discussion early days. I'd keep them very separate. My new agent, I've had a very brief conversation with him about it, but I think we're going to go out for drinks next week and have a longer conversation about it and where I don't know how many people are aware of this, but being on YouTube as a photographer is sort of career suicide in the commercial world. So it's making sure that I don't dilute my commercial photography brand, which is kind of where the money is.
Do you know, I did not know that at all. I never, ever thought that would be an issue. I know that people feel that if you're a commercial photographer, then showing wedding photography is possibly the worst thing you could possibly do. But yes. I don't quite understand why being on YouTube would cause such an issue.
It's a difficult thing, and I am the only one of my kind on there.
You are, yeah.
There is no other commercial photographer on YouTube with an agent who does the work, sort of the level I work at, which is, I'll get to why that also becomes tricky. But yeah, like you could say, being a wedding photographer, an event photographer, anything like that, family portrait, it just, if anyone in the commercial world knew you did that, that would kind of be game over. You'd be sort of seen as a bit of a Mickey Mouse photographer. It's a very elitist and gatekeepering kind of world.
Yeah.
It's like, not only are we expected just to do the one thing we do, we're also expected to do it just in our one style. And like, the jobs are few and far between, but they pay. So it works out okay. But yeah, I've spoke to a few people about it in the industry, a couple of art buyers and creative directors who I know, and they're all like, yeah, I'd keep that quiet.
It's always, do you know, I find it, I'm mildly irritated by those that find, because I am one, wedding photography, somehow, as you say, Mickey Mouse or beneath the this elitist world of commercial photography. Because when you look at it, it can be the ultimate way of storytelling. You meet the most incredible people. You're probably called upon to do what might be considered quite commercial work at times as well.
Yeah, I mean, I started as a wedding photographer. I think it was probably, or weddings and events. I don't know which one would have come first. Probably events. I doubt anyone would have let me loose at a wedding early days. If I did, I apologise. But it's how I learned. Yeah. And I found it incredibly useful learning that way. I kind of understand why the commercial world doesn't allow wedding photographers to go into it, because it is its own thing. Yeah. It's its own skill set. You need... like the skill set required to shoot a wedding is completely different to shooting an ad campaign.
Yeah, of course.
But I don't understand the sort of like looking down on it as if it's like a lesser career. It's like, oh, you shoot weddings?
Yeah.
It's like, it's a real, like dirty word in photography.
It's something we could go round and round in circles.
Yeah.
Come on then. Why did your photography business fail? What was the problem with photographing people? Because I think you did it, if you don't mind me saying, and blowing smoke, as they say, bloody well.
I mean, I think I was okay at it. Like it was a difficult one. So there's a few issues with it. One is I don't live in London. And not all the people, the majority of the people of interest to be photographed are in London.
Yeah.
Which instantly throws up a huge barrier. And then also not being in London, it's a very trendy scene in the portrait kind of world. So you kind of have to be going to Soho House at the weekend and, making sure you're at the right places and, Century Club and that sort of world. And I'm not that person. It was also incredibly stressful for me to do. Like, I like working with people, but I don't like working with people when they're the subject, because they don't do as they're told. There's a real, like, I work with huge crews on food shoots. The food stays where you put it.
Yeah.
And all the people are collaborative.
But it doesn't answer back and say, get my best side, does it?
Yeah, and I think there's also that, if we get the best side, it's the tomato's not going to go, I don't like the way I look, whereas the person might say, I don't like the way I look. And obviously sometimes that's the way the person looks. That's a very difficult situation to deal with, and it just wasn't for me. I mean, it wasn't like the business went bankrupt. I stopped the business because I wasn't enjoying it. It was making profit, it was making money, it just wasn't sustainable for me.
I think it was interesting that you say you kind of, I think you've answered it there, you self-sabotaged in a way.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think I partied a bit too hard as well to sort of cope with the stress of all these extra things. And it was one of those things, if I was carried on doing it now, I probably would look 10 years older than I currently do, and, probably have slight cirrhosis of the liver, but it's lucky I left that life behind, because it's not for me, but for some people, that's their dream job.
And you said a reasonable blame lays at the door of socialising. Well, I think we're alike, really, that you and I go into a room of lots of people and have to share small talk, and we'd probably cower in the corner, rocking.
Yeah, and I think the first thing you do is you walk into the room, you get given a drink, and I sit there nervously drinking the drink, and before you know it, I've had 3, and then it's like, it's a slippery slope in that sense. Yeah.
Well, the pandemic happened, and although the pandemic was not a nice time for people, obviously it being a disease which took its toll on everything from lives to businesses to whatever, it actually kind of rescued you in a way, didn't it?
Yeah, and kind of, I mean, I'd got the plan already in place. I was ready to change my business because of Brexit, which at the time, people probably don't remember this, was what was going to destroy everyone's businesses. And I remember vividly the day the Brexit vote happened, I lost £45,000 in a day of bookings.
How?
Everyone just cancelled.
Really?
Yeah, it was like my phone just rang all day. There was just people cancelling bookings. I was like, great. That's good. So if that's the day the vote happens, how bad's the actual Brexit going to happen?
Yeah.
Now, little did I know that coinciding with Brexit was a worldwide pandemic.
Just around the corner, yeah.
But luckily my plan worked both for Brexit and a pandemic. So for me, it was fine. But I started doing online workshops, which are like digital downloads, doing portfolio reviews, which again are remote recordings, one-to-ones, mentorships as a business. And that was going to be the bit which would tide me over whilst photography took a death because Brexit sort of happened. And I did lose a lot of my clients. A lot of my clients were based abroad, and they could no longer work with us regardless of the pandemic.
Oh, that was the reason for the cancellation. I was trying to, in my mind.
Yeah, it was just, well, it was a mixture of things. The cancellations were either, you can't come and work in our country anymore, because I was doing a lot of work in Paris at the time, or we're scared, so we're going to cancel all bookings.
Yeah.
Which happens all the time, I guess. But yeah, luckily for me, my plan also worked with a pandemic. So I did that. And literally the week before the pandemic, I was in Chipping Norton, and I was reading an article about pop art I think it was in the Sunday Times, which makes me sound very bougie.
Only if you were in a coffee shop at the time and having an oat milk latte.
No, looking at, well, in a bed and breakfast, but it was, there I was reading this article, and my partner was like, if you like pop art so much, why don't you just create work that looks like that instead of what you're doing, which doesn't make you happy? The pandemic happened when we got back. I went to my studio the day before lockdown, collected a camera, a lens, a light, and a light stand, and I shot an entire portfolio on my kitchen floor. So I got set up my Tin House Studio World, the whole YouTube education platform running. And then I started working on this portfolio, and I had an agent at the time, and he was very much an agent for like portrait people. Yeah. And I looked for a new agent, and I approached all the top agents in the country with this body of work I'd created on my kitchen floor. And everybody was interested. It was the strangest thing after years of trying to like make it to the bigger time, as it were. Spending all this time in my studio with fancy equipment. It was just one camera, one lens, one light, and a kitchen floor, and doing what I like to do, which got my body of work to a point where everyone was interested.
So this sort of big, brash, bold, colourful, beautifully colourful style you had was literally one light and the kitchen floor. That's an incredible story.
The entire body of work was created in 2 days.
Good Lord.
And it was just like, this is what I like the look of. I'm going to do it and see whether other people like it. And I thought, I've got nothing else to do. We're in lockdown. And luckily everyone liked it. And then because I live with a food stylist as my partner, we have our own studio as well. We were able to work quite a bit during lockdown. So I shot some big ad campaigns for like PepsiCo and people like that.
So PepsiCo came out of this almost immediately, did it?
Yeah, I think like I probably got my 5 biggest shoots during lockdown, just because I thought I'll do what I like the look of instead of what I think people want.
Yeah. You must have had a commercial name anyway, I know, in portrait world, albeit, yes, in portraits. But did that help that process? Or were the two mutually very exclusive? One was food, one was portraits, might as well have been weddings.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're just completely separate. I mean, I always trade, as every photographer should do, under my name. Which is why we have Tin House Studio for the YouTube and education. But me as a photographer, it's just my name. But the people I was looking for representation with were not the people who would have been even considering me as a portrait photographer. I mean, the only real reason I had an agent before that was because my girlfriend had an agent and he represented me as well.
Yeah.
It was no like skill on my part. It was just I think, him being a nice person.
Yeah, but if they looked up your name, they're going to find all your portraits, aren't they?
Not anymore.
No, or at the time they would have done. So it was a real step change. Are you a risk taker generally?
Yes. Yes. I mean, I handed in my notice with my current agent. He's a very well-respected agent without a backup plan. Just because I thought I've been doing this for a while. It's kind of like not stagnated, but like I'm treading water. Let's see what's next. So I handed in my notice and thought, we'll worry about the consequences after that. So I did that. Started setting up some meetings, looked at some different options and directions, and then I signed with Agent at Large.
Yeah.
who's Peter Gearing and his team. So yeah, now working on new projects with new clients.
How much have you, I mean, you've had to learn the whole thing on the job, as it were. That day you first laid out that stuff on the kitchen floor. Since then, you've had to learn to shoot bottles, reflective surfaces, weird shaped surfaces, flat lays. It was fair to say it would have been an incredibly steep learning curve, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, obviously I know the fundamentals of photography, which don't change at all. The difference is not so much the technical stuff. That's quite easy, or at least I find it quite easy to learn, because it's like, it is this because it is. The difficult stuff to learn is the way the viewer sees the images and what they like, and how the subject should be presented. And so not really the how to do the picture bit, but the what to take the picture of. And a big reason my body of work's been successful is because of the subject matters I've chosen. What I choose to photograph is probably more important than how I photograph it. And I think that gets lost all the time, because I use like quite technical equipment. Like we use like a technical camera, which is like, there's like an old bellows camera, but digital. And then it's like, we use like really quite premium broncolor lighting kit. And there's a lot of very fancy equipment that gets used, but it's probably only 5% of the images because of that. The rest of it is the subject matter that we put in front of the camera and its relevance to popular culture.
But how you shoot it must be, I would have thought that would be probably the thing, because it's your style. And I would assume that if somebody came to you and said, well, we want to shoot something in a style that's just not you at all, you wouldn't do it.
Yeah, pretty much. In the commercial world, it's very much you only get booked for jobs that are exactly like your work.
On point for you.
Yeah, which is why it's so important to have like a very cohesive body of work.
Yeah.
So we just had, like, I think it was like 3 or 4 inquiries at the end of last week, and all of them, they just look like work from my portfolio.
Yeah.
Stand a pretty good chance of winning those, because what they want is what I do.
At the end of the film, and you may have answered this, you say these words: if you don't like it, quit it. I'm a big fan of quitting, notwithstanding the responsibilities that sometimes have us do things for much, much longer than we should. It's a tricky thing to suggest to a creative who feels they're somewhat trapped in a genre they don't belong in, isn't it? But I mean, I can almost hear, but Scott, I have 3 children, a partner, and a horrible COVID bounce back loan. It does take guts to quit stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I look at it like, for me personally, like, photography is my passion. I will not take pictures that I do not want to take, but I will go and work in a bar at night or clean toilets to make money.
Yeah.
So I would happily go, well, do you know what? This isn't for me. I'm going to go and start a new body of work. And to fund that, I'm going to go and work in the local bar. Or maybe it's a case that we build the other body of work whilst I have this work still ticking over. And once, you know, I'm making enough money from the new work, we just sack off the old work. There's always such a balancing act, and because everyone's situation's so different, it's so hard to like say, you know, this is what you should do. So to be at the top where you're getting that, you have to just be better than everyone else. And the only way to do that is to really play to your strengths and do what you like. If you're not fully in it, the chance of being at that top level is just so slim. I did some numbers recently based on government stats, and there's 75,000 professional photographers in the UK.
Whoa.
And out of those, and I assume a lot of them aren't commercial photographers or whatever it may be, but assuming...
So there'll be social photographers, wedding,
exactly.
portrait, children, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, these are people returning tax returns.
Yeah.
The average salary is 24,000 a year. But out of those, 104 people have an agent and shoot at high level work.
Right.
So that's 0.01% of photographers make most of the money. And to be in that bit, if you're not doing something you truly love and you like understand to such a ridiculous level that your friends at the pub stop inviting you out for it, like that's sort of the playing ground. But that, you know, I mean, I come from a sporting background, so I've always been very elitist in my goals. I'm always like, well, if I'm not going to be at the top, I've got no interest. Whereas I've got friends who are like, I literally get paid 20 grand a year to go and take some pictures. It's great. And they're happy as Larry. They're probably happier than I am, to be fair.
In this new, we'll talk about YouTube now, I think. In this new YouTube series, I know you've done one of the series so far, Food Photographer Tries Documentary, which I'll come to in a moment. Perhaps one of those can be Food Photographer Revisits Weddings. Unless you would find that far too exhausting, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can handle that nowadays.
I'm going to take you to one of mine. You chose the Queen's funeral as your backdrop to the experience of Food Photographer Tries Documentary. And I would imagine you had to think very, very differently that day in terms of your photography, kit-wise to start with. Although you shot it on film, didn't you? That particular.
Yes, yeah. So it was I don't have an opinion either way in the royal family. I know a lot of people are very like, we must have them and we must get rid of them.
Yeah.
But I thought this is a very culturally significant moment in time.
Yeah.
And I managed to grab a press pass for the day as well, so I could pretty much go anywhere that I might like to go.
Wow.
And cut through various places as well. But I did very little planning. Well, no, I did a lot of planning for it. I planned everything out. Make sure I knew where I was going to be and all the rest of it. And then when I turned up on the day, it wasn't what I expected.
Oh.
I knew it was going to be busy, but I hadn't quite fathomed how many people there were going to be.
Well, you set off at 4 o'clock in the morning from Rugby or something, 4:30.
Yes, yeah. I drove to Rugby, got the train from there because I was trying to do it on a bit of a budget. And for some reason, it's £20 from Rugby to London, but 175 from Leicester to London, despite the fact it's the same distance.
Yeah,
which is odd, but there we go. So off I went, and I turned up, and it was just like the trains were dead. I was like, oh, no one's going in. It's going to be really quiet. But obviously all of London turned up. And I ended up deciding, instead of photographing the Queen's funeral, I was just like, this is pointless. I'm going to spend 10 hours to get 5 photos. I'll photograph the people there instead. Yeah. And I committed to that as soon as I arrived in Euston. And I just sort of plotted I had like one AirPod in, which was giving me directions to get to the main area. And I just worked my way along the crowd and took photographs of people.
You made 116 shots, to be precise. And I think you were a bit hard on yourself, actually, because you said you only made 6 good shots.
Yeah, I expected better for myself. What I didn't factor in was that I'd be nervous photographing people.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, really nervous. I was suddenly like, oh, this might not be socially acceptable to do this at a funeral.
Yeah.
Or, maybe I'll get some grief from somebody for doing it. But no, everyone was fine with it. And bizarrely enough, I had the royal family, I was in a backstage area, and I had the royal family pull up in their cars right next to me.
Oh.
And I saw them, and at no point did I think I'll take a photograph of them. And then all of a sudden, all these press people had their cameras up against the windows. I was thinking, it's still someone's mum's funeral.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know. But yeah, it was an interesting day. I love documentary photography. I have an ongoing project where every time I go to a high-rise car park, I take a shot off the side of the car park on my Bronica.
Right.
And I just got this huge catalogue of car park views, which is steadily growing.
At some stage, that's going to be a book, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I've never really committed to a long-term project. And I was like, this is quite straightforward.
Yeah.
I've got one camera that just lives. I bought a second Bronica because...
For the car parks.
That was the right thing to do with money. And it just lives in the spare wheel compartment of my car.
Fantastic. So whenever you go to a car park, that's it. Can you just give me some space, everybody? I need 5 minutes.
And Scott Chathinio returns for part 2 shortly. He probably didn't notice because I edited fairly heavily the last part of my chat just before my conversation with Scott, but I was walking along the path here. There was a particularly overgrown section. I was trying to get to something that I thought looked man-made. In the end, it wasn't. So I suffered for my art here, in the end, it turned out not to be a picture. But in the process of trying to get there, I walked through. I must have set thousands of little midges and stuff up in the air, and I took a deep intake of breath. For what reason I can't. It was like, oh, they're there, and in doing so, managed to ingest breakfast, if that doesn't sound too disgusting. And so it's taken about. It's taken about 20-25 minutes now to stop coughing. I think I'm okay. Car?
Yes?
You might need to come and collect me.
Not down there, I'm not. I've just been washed.
Be like that then. And by the by, before my good friends of Social Photographyville, and of course I live in that neighbourhood too, come back to me to complain about the language used during that segment to describe what some of us do as photographers as, this is a derogatory phrase, but it's a fact of creative life that some people describe social photography as Mickey Mouse photography. And I think it's an interesting whole topic, all of itself, because whether you like it or not, we cannot control how those in those there ivory towers see us. My brother-in-law, who I very much love, by the way, in case you somehow get to listen to this, Gareth, he was responsible actually for getting ranking on this show. So thank you again, Gareth, for that. But in all the time that I have known him otherwise, with the exception of a few bits and bobs, photographically this is, in my 20 years-ish career in photography, because there are a few years, well, there's a few years on top of that actually, of practicing to get to that stage. He has never ventured to put me forward for any photography. Why is that relevant, Neil? Well, I'm glad you asked me, I'll tell you. He's a product and brand stylist, and I like to think PR genius in the fashion world that is London. He works with big brands and big names and big agencies. Did I say agencies? And any other big that's applicable to fashion in the capital. But he has never, and will never, I imagine, use me as a photographer in the fashion industry. And I quite liked the idea at some stages of shooting fashion. I thought, that's something I think I'd like that world. He'd use an emerging photographer leaving college with a very much smaller portfolio, definitely, any day of the week. And I'm sure it's not because he doesn't think I can make fashion photographs professionally, but if he was truly honest with himself, even if this is a deep mental subconscious level that he's not entirely aware of, I sense he would have the worry that those he works with in his industry might find out that his brother-in-law shoots weddings. And that would reflect, and I think it would, adversely on Gareth as a responsible decision maker in that industry. I do think what is Mickey Mouse photography would make for a super episode. Might be a bit too niche, I don't know. Let me know. You're good at this stuff. You guide me very well. Certainly it would be an emotive one. Neil, I'm not sure your blood pressure could take that week. Probably not. Having a speciality is important, though, isn't it, for many genres? You might use surgeon quite rightly for that. I mean, do you want a cardiologist to place a stent, or are you happy for your GP to go through it on a Tuesday morning just before they start looking at ingrown toenails? I know, terrible sweeping generalisation, but you kind of get what I mean. The GP will probably say, well, look, Neil, I could do that. I've done that at uni. I could put me in the right theatre with the right people in the right kit. I can do that. But no, you wouldn't necessarily choose them, would you? Possibly, actually, a better example of this is a professional pilot. Now, I know a pilot who flies those huge A380 super jumbos, the Airbuses. The one that used to, and I did have to look this up, had a price list. They don't make them anymore now, do they? But at the time, when you can get them at a snip now, I saw one the other day for sale at $25 million. Ha! Neil, order me two. Do they come in different colours? No, but when they first made them, they were $450 million a pop. And fuel-wise, they cost $29,000. That's the top end. Lower end, 26. Oh, another snip, Neil. $1,000 an hour in the air in terms of fuel. Don't tell Greta. But at the weekend, he flies a Piper Cub, a tiny two-seater, I think from the late 30s, possibly 40s. But the wingspan would probably easily fit inside his Airbus. And I could probably jog quicker than his Cub flies. But he's got thousands upon thousands of hours as a pilot in command. He's got his grey beard of trust and 4 stripes upon each of his shoulders that says, I am not a mouse of Mickeyness, even when I'm flying a tail dragger that the other pilots scoff at when they're taxiing off in their brand new weekend Cessnas. And I don't believe he ever really tells anybody at his flying club. They must know, I'm sure. But he can do both. He's got his, if you like, Mickey Mouse plane. I know Piper Cub enthusiasts, but I'm trying to make a sort of a comparison here. He's got his Mickey Mouse plane and his huge, great, very impressive, big, professional super jumbo. But he can do both. I think it is an interesting debate. Shall we quit there? The lady doth protest too much, Neil. Right, shall we do our newly timed and named feature roughly in the middle of the show? Yes, Neil, let's. Because it's the first Friday of the month, the first of these will actually be an established feature, although it used to sit nearer at the end. It is Assignment Week. Now, the previous assignment, I gave you a few more days to enter, so there's a little bit of crossover here. And the flask winner, the famous not-so-famous flask, that's going to be announced next week. But in the meantime, I would like Scott to make a reappearance here, to cross his studio floor and pull out a different hat, from photographer to assignment setter. Now, I know usually I like to have a different voice for the assignment from the guest I'm featuring of the week, but I think this week, guided by the inspiration of keeping things simple, a tone or theme of our chat, perhaps, I'd like to change the rules. I think you'll like this one. In fact, I know you'll like this one. I've already made one picture for it, and I'm going in for more.
The Photowalk assignment.
So, an assignment, Scott. What will that be from a premier food photographer? I'm thinking it might be food, but it might not be.
So I think, like, for me personally, with a lot of my work, it's about nostalgia, and it's about bringing something down to its pure essence. So if you look at a lot of my work, it'll be a single item on a solid background. And so the assignment for everyone is to try and find something that really represents their childhood in a singular item and just to hero that item. So maybe it's a tape cassette, and it's just making that tape cassette the absolute hero. And the more mundane and the more like average the item is, I always think the better. Like, everyone tries to photograph the most fancy food possible, but the photos that get me the most work are like a single picture of a jelly baby. And it's just about trying to find that perfect item which just sums up who you are as a person and photographing it.
Actually, one of my favourite pictures of yours is a bag of... It's not the bag, it's on the table of cheesy Wotsits.
Yes, yeah.
See? Hero.
It's very much a 1980s sort of snack.
But yeah, for me though, that's just this big, bold... But you're looking for one item really, aren't you?
Yeah, I always think like the simpler you can make something, the better the image is. Like, at one point when I've done this, we all overcomplicate stuff and make everything as difficult as possible. Whereas nowadays, my work is one light, one lens, and one subject matter. And it's just boiling it down to that essence of what it is you're trying to say.
The Photowalk assignment.
So, challenge set. Good luck. And I think this one's going to be fascinating because I get to see, and I think this is going to be fun actually, I get to see the trinkets of your life. The things that are really very important to you. Things that you've made hero images of. And I know I've talked about this before, but it was a while back. I photographed my father's old work tools, and that was a great deal of fun, trying to do that in an artistic manner. But actually, this time I think I might go straight back in there into the shed when I'm back from this photo walk. Note to self: pull out some of Dad's old work tools that he had that I think belonged to his dad, possibly his grandfather too, because I think they might make, in terms of simplicity, I'd like to have another go at those. Anyway, good luck for that. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you produce. Send them to this address, email address, stories@photowalk.show. Stories@photowalk.show. 2,500 pixels wide, whatever shape you shoot, would really help me in the optimization stakes. If you can't do that though, don't worry, send them in, and I'll do the heavy lifting for you, as I say. And if you've been walking anywhere that you think we'll enjoy, a bit like the Sicilian story that came in from Morris, then please send me your postcards of where you are, where you've been, where you're going, the walks that you make each day. And if you can lay some text down alongside with it as well, just to tell us the stories of these places and the stories of you, then that will be great. And on that note, as I mentioned, stories of you, if you haven't got a picture, then don't worry. It's always great to hear from you and your stories. They're very, very inspirational, the tales of your life. Our show here is made possible by our incredible patron community, which I call Extra Milers. We meet for our regular Zoom show, as I mentioned before, and every Wednesday there's an extra show. It's an extra walk. This week it's an hour and 8 minutes. The 8 minutes, very important. And the great thing about it is that it features you. You are the stars of that show. But this week also, we have a special guest to top our 2 Extra Miler guests. Those being Craig Hughes, who shares how he's going about changing his life to become a pro photographer in a country that he moved to start over in life. And Miles Barfield, who was my guest last week, comes back to share some roll of 12 answers and what it's like to be making pictures in the middle of the night and find yourself stalked by wild boar and coyote. You be careful, Miles. How do you spell coyote, by the way? But I talked with CD17 about her book, The Weights We Carry, and I thought you might enjoy hearing a couple of minutes.
On this week's Extra Mile.
I was walking with Barney, my very expressive cockapoo dog, week before last, I think it was, and we were trekking along one of our favourite stretches of a canal that we live next to. And along the path in the distance came this very lonely figure riding a bike. He was packed to the very reaches with everything you might need to go away on that bike. He had a tent, he had food supplies, big water bottles on the back, he had his map on the handlebars, he had his entire life on that bike. And I said to him, where are you going? And he said, well, I've come from London and I'm going west. His plan was that he might go back the following week. He did actually say to me, or I might not. The great freedom, which is where the weights we carry story starts, isn't it?
Yes.
Tell me why a bike and why Scotland?
A very practical reason is I was underage. I can't get a car. And if I walk there, it's very tiring.
Okay, so the car was out of the question. It had to be the bike. But why Scotland?
Well, Scotland, interesting. Well, because COVID, I can't go home, and then I visited Scotland like once when I was very down, and then it just something about it really reminds me of my home. It's just like the people are very like genuine, very straightforward when they have like something on their mind, no filter. Yeah, and then also the landscape that is like very like away from the city. So I'm like, okay, that's a great place to go. And also it reminds me of my hometown.
Well, you started in Inverness and you went out. We know Inverness because we do a photo retreat there each year. But you went out from Inverness, and there are great parts of Scotland where you travel where you won't meet anybody at all. And it was a solo endeavour, this, wasn't it? Why did you decide to do it alone?
Oh, because, you know, most of the time in everyone's life, you are under influence of others. And at that time, I just graduated, and then I want to give myself a chance to do something for myself. And I want to get the strength that I can just do something on my own.
Did you find yourself very much out of your comfort zone to start with?
Well, there's definitely parts I'm like, it's very outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
But I handled it. Yeah, like especially the first night I started wild camping.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh.
Yes. Ooh is, I think, how I might be thinking, or whew. If I found myself in a tent on my own in the middle of nowhere. It's a wonderful story, though. And I'm going to leave a link on today's show page for her book, The Weights We Carry, Poems from a Solo Bike Packing Journey Around the Scottish Highlands and Orkney Islands. 17 is a photographer, a painter, a DJ, an artist. And it was great fun talking with her, and she is my guest on the Extra Mile. Anyway, more on this week's Extra Mile, which is out now. You can hear those conversations in full, and you can become an Extra Miler by clicking on the Support the Show icon on the front of the website, photowalk.show. Back to your letters in a mo, but while I have your ears, Africa 24 is now taking bookings. We are almost at the halfway stage of in terms of those that are coming on the expedition. Now, I was told by a few people that run these expeditions that I should expect only a couple of formal attendees signed up and ready to get on the plane with me in January 24, but we've already gone past that. So thank you, and I'm so looking forward to spending some time. So yeah, 2024, we're going to Africa. We'll return to Inverness, and if you would like a little heads up here, we are going to possibly, but the plan's looking good, go peak walking in the middle of France. The first week, we think, of July. So planning is starting right now. Anyway, Africa calling. Let me head back to my studio self for a moment to briefly tell you about one of the days during the adventure that we're going to have at the start of 2024 in January.
Gambia 2024. We're off together for a holiday, a retreat, an expedition, an all-in-one exciting adventure to the smiling coast of Africa, the Gambia, where we'll be spending time with the people of this wonderful small country on the west coast. River trips and markets and wildlife and villages and music and food, and, well, it's a 10-day photo trip guided by 3 experienced photographers and filmmakers. Just a taster, on the Friday, we privately join a local football team for their training early morning before visiting the fishing town of Bakau, and then Kachikali, one of 3 sacred crocodile pools used as sites for fertility rituals. It is these days included on the tourist trail, so our challenge there is to tell the story of this place and pool, which is under the custody of a 500-year chiefly clan called Bojang, in a way that respects the women who take a pilgrimage here to douse themselves in curative waters made sacred by the crocs, the largest being a 70-year-old male named Charlie, reputedly after the first tourist who had the nerve to touch him. Now, you can caress the crocs, apparently, and I'm not talking about the rubber shoe wear that goes by the same name. I might take your lead on that one. In the afternoon, we're bound for the bustling Serekunda market before returning to our hotel base to discuss the river part of our week to come. Every day a new adventure with new friends, making pictures that will form the books and stories of our life. You'll see the link for Africa 24 on the show page at photowalk.show. A 4th place of 10 has now gone, and I believe a 5th is in the stages of just organising some stuff. We look forward to seeing you.
I started to record the next link, as we call it in professional land, and I had to start over because my tummy made a very loud "Can we have breakfast?" sound. So I've had a word, and we'll start afresh with a diptych of letters in a row, some of the snappier ones for the mailbag. You're talking about crocodiles again, Neil? No. I'm starting with one I should have read a few weeks ago, if not a month. So, Luc van Vliet from Netherlands land, I hope you will forgive me. Dear Neil, after finding your podcast and listening to you walking and talking about photography, I wanted to send you some of my work, which will actually open in an exhibition coming up at the Ruskin Museum in Coniston. John Ruskin, by the way, for my other listener, because I know you know this, was an English writer, philosopher, art critic and polymath of the Victorian era. He wrote on subjects as varied as geology, architecture, myth, ornithology, literature, education, botany, and on the days he'd listened to the LBC phone-in, the political economy as well. Just some background. I'm a young, says Luc, 1988, Dutch photographer, and for this body of work I walked the Camino Primitivo to Santiago to Compostela. I climbed the Mont Ventoux, and I also ventured in the Lake District. The exhibition lasts until June the 11th, in case some of you are in the neighbourhood there. Now, this is why I should have mentioned it a bit before, so my apologies for that. But Luke, I am blaming Barney for eating my homework. We're still sort of in time for the exhibition, though, because it's still on. It's still on for a few more days, and your work is online, so it's all there. It's laid out to see, and I'm going to leave a link to your work because it's absolutely gorgeous. But also, can I extend, or may I extend, an invitation for you to appear on the programme? Because I think I'd love to talk to you. We've talked about this trail before, but everybody's interpretation of it, everybody's experience of it is different, and yours is too. So I'd love to hear about that adventure you made, or adventures, because there's several places here with your camera. If you would like to come on the show, there we go. Invitation extended, live. Well, sort of live. Next up, Dominic Sagar. Thank you so much for taking me on your walk to find your mum on the Extra Mile. Yes, that was a few months ago now, wasn't it? I feel incredibly honoured to have been brought along. What a fantastic story. It was very kind of you to mention that. And for those that are thinking, hang on, I didn't hear that episode. It was an Extra Mile one. And we were together. We were in Kent on the coast, finding my birth mum's grave, and there was a story around it, and it's a story that's still continuing, still working on the ancestral part of the whole thing. Now, as your other listener, says Dominic, I feel we need to have a chat. It sounds like I am in trouble. That comment from one of your former colleagues at the BBC asking, how did you become a wedding photographer, seems to still bother you. I've heard you talk about it 3 times recently. Once was on your interview on the Fuji Love podcast. Tell yourself, tell them, I feel I'm being told off here, because you're bloody good and a great person to be around. Like Paul Sanders said, you need to be proud of the decisions you make and how much you've elevated human experiences, which you wouldn't have done if you'd stayed. Please don't think you ever need to go back. I'm told. It feels a bit self-indulgent, but they were Dominic's words. I did find some good quotes, Dominic, on this subject. This one's a non. Don't look back. You're not going that way. That seems to be a bumper sticker, quite a popular bumper sticker. But this one is good too. It's okay to look back at the past. Just don't stare. But I think this one is very relevant, given that my first love was radio, Dominic. This is from J.K. Rowling, who knows a thing or two about laying down a smart thought. Things we lose have a way of coming back to us, if not always in the way we expect. And I often feel that radio's come back, but even better, you see, with this podcast, it's embraced my 2 life stories, really, making sound and making pictures. So I feel privileged that I have so many friends around me, such as you, Dominic, writing in, and inspirational stories that people write in here to help others as they make their photo walks. And their I know it's an overused word now, I'm going to use the J word, stand by, warning, their journeys through life. P.S. Here's a picture from my recent photo walk. It's actually a drive because my pup loves to come along but can't walk very far anymore. It's an old shuttered theatre. Theater. My American spell check insists. But in 1927, starting with movies, it went on to become a concert venue much later in the 70s. I bet that's amazing inside. The theatre that in the town where I am now, the movie theatre, was desolate for years, and then a gym bought it, Dominic. And I sense that probably there's quite a few cinemas, theatres, movie theatres that have been bought and converted into things like gyms. But they were hiring out the top floor. And I thought, I'll go along and have a look. Because at the time, I mean, this is right at the point I was looking for studio premises. Because initially, yes, I had a portrait studio business. And I thought, well, I'll go and have a look, and I'll snoop around to see if, because it did look really cool, lovely old architecture on these old movie theatres, aren't there? And I got taken to the top floor. Boy, did it need some work. It had holes in it felt like there were holes. I'm sure there was light coming through the roof at the top, but it was the whole top tier of the cinema, because it was one of those big one screen theatres or cinemas. But this was the top. Underneath was the roof that was there was a roof put in place, so people in the gym would have no idea of what was above it. But it was a load of tiered seating that had been ruined by the pigeons that were flying freely within that loft space. But then just behind, there were all the projection. There was the projection room, and then there were lots of storage rooms, which I would imagine were for cans of film and so on and so forth. It was really good. It was like a real gem, and I thought this would be great. But number one, I was thinking I don't want to fix this roof. Number two, I wasn't quite sure that because the tiered seating, it was quite a rake really. That was probably never going to work for a studio, but it was great because I was shooting film at the time, and the projection room in particular would have made a fantastic dark room. It was lovely. It really was. I went and looked up, though, the Santa Fe Theatre, since you sent this picture in, which I will share on the show page, and I spied two things in your picture. This old boarded-up picture house is using the word theatre, but not spelt in the American spell-check way, spelt Theatre. And I know it's only a very small thing, but I was wondering whether, and you can help me with this one, whether it's spelt a different way depending upon if it's stage or cinema. Just a thought. You can fill in the gaps there. Also, it's fun to see the last film because maybe it was the last film, I like to think it was, that's up on the board outside the cinema that's now boarded up, although it was a music venue for a time. So perhaps actually somebody or maybe it was left there from the very last movie, or perhaps people put up random different films as a kind of a feature. But Cyclops is apparently showing tonight, which would have been about 40 or 50 years ago. But what I'd like most of all, challenge set here, is I'd love, Dominic, for you to go back and see if you can photograph inside. Oh, I bet it's fascinating. Bit of urbex, bit of urban exploration. All right, part two then of my chat now with Scott Chathinio. We talk about workshops and YouTube and standby AI, but not the scary version of. We talk about accepting that you can't do everything. It's okay. Celebrate the fact that you can't do everything. Here's part two of my conversation with Scott.
I was discussing recently how there seems to be a shift from select photographers doing this thing. The main thrust of their business is being workshop-led. Now, you teach lots, going by the breadth of things you tutor from your website. But how much has that changed across the years, and how much has that become a necessary thing for photographers to do in a world that's getting ever more competitive for them?
Yes, I mean, in terms of, I was a teacher for many years in many forms. I was a sports coach. I worked in primary schools. I worked in special education schools as well. Right. So I did my master's. Yeah. So I've always done teaching, and I ran workshops when I started in photography because I needed to make more money. And I ran them badly. Not badly in terms of the workshops were bad, but badly in terms of the way they were scalable and profitable was bad. Yeah. So I often get people going, "Can you come and run a workshop for us?" And I just have to say no. Because I can have 1,000 people on my digital workshop, but you can only get 20 people in a room. And those 20 people can't possibly afford enough to make up for the difference of there being 980 less people there. Now, in terms of whether it's required, I am in the very fortunate position that both of my businesses make enough money to be standalone businesses. So whether I'm the YouTuber educator or whether I'm the photographer, I don't need the other income. Yeah. But COVID put the fear into me. So now I'm going to continually keep a business running that I can run from a house with a laptop or, whatever it may be, that doesn't require me to be on set. It's an interesting social thing that's happened there. And you're not the only one I've heard say that I don't think for the rest of my career I will ever feel easy about the fact that I might suddenly have to stop it all one day for 3 years. Exactly. Yeah. And it's, it might not be another pandemic. It might be a recession. At the start of this year, it was completely dead in the commercial industry. Nobody was working. And I know everybody was panicking. So all were messaging me going, "Are you working at the moment?" And I was absolutely fine because I make enough money for my other business to not have to worry about it. So YouTube and the workshops I sell, But, being said, I want to be able to know that if it all goes wrong again, I've got years and years worth of savings and I can just go, it's okay. It won't be stressful like last time. Or maybe, in the future, I only do the jobs I want to do rather than the jobs that come in. So, yeah, I mean, it's a real nice, especially when your hobby becomes your job. Like 5 years ago, when we needed to come and shoot this event in London for 3 days, I'd go and do it because I'd need the money. Whereas today, regardless of the money, I'd look at it and go, I don't want to do that. I don't need to do that. I'm not going to do that. And that's a really nice feeling.
Yeah. Other things that have happened of late that can come along and just pull the rug from underneath you include something we talk a lot about at the moment, perhaps too much, AI. You have a different thought about AI. You have a slightly more, definitely a more positive feeling about AI. And the reason I mention AI in commercial photography as being a bit of a worry in the same sentence is because I recently had a conversation with a photographer who'd spent some time in commercial forums, listening to food photographers in particular get very worried about the advent of AI. You don't think of it in the same way, do you? And that's probably because you have a particular style and you're an inventor.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of caveats with this. One is that I like to create images.
Yeah.
I don't mind if I use a scanner, a camera, a tablet. It doesn't bother me. The reason I use a camera is because I can't draw. I'd love to be drawing and painting, but I just can't. Yeah. It's horrific. Honestly, you'd assume that a 2-year-old had done any drawing I've done.
I'm sure not.
In that sense, it doesn't bother me. I've always been very much of the, if I could draw, I wouldn't need a camera.
Oh, right.
The camera is very limiting. For me to create the images I want to create, it's harder with a camera than it would be with pen and paper. Yeah. There has to be some, quite technical things going on for me to get the images how I want them to be. So for that, already I'm not bothered because I'd be quite happy typing into an AI machine if that did come to it and getting my images that way. But there's a few reasons I don't think that's going to happen. One is currently AI, someone sent me some images and went, I've created these in AI, they're brilliant. I went, that's great. Can you do the following amendments to it? And I'd done a quick digital stamp of what I wanted it to look like, and they couldn't make it do that. They could make it come up with what they thought it needed to look like, but it can't take precise direction. So when a creative director goes, can you move that bottle 3 millimeters to the left, put the catch light a centimeter higher up, and can you swing focus so that these fall out and these come into focus? Typing that into AI doesn't really result in what you'd expect it to. Yeah. It gives you a result. Often the images are really cool. They look amazing. I love AI images, but you can't get it to do exactly what you need it to do. Now, in the food world, we've been, for years, people have been going, CGI is going to replace photography. CGI is going to be the end of it. Yeah. Now, I work with a couple of CGI artists regularly. So say we're shooting crisps, for example. The crisp packet will be done by CGI. It's a nightmare to photograph and Photoshop a crisp packet, but legally the crisp has to be a crisp. An AI-generated crisp still won't be a Walker's crisp. So that's still going to need photographing.
That's interesting. So actually, so the fact that it has to be a real crisp is going to put a spanner in the works of AI. I'd never considered that.
And then, so there's a legal reasoning to it, but there's also it's just if you think about it, like a can of Coke being poured, we can draw it, we can paint it, we can digitally draw it, we can CGI it, and we can photograph it. All of these options will be used in an advert, all of them. And they always have been. It's not like when photographs came along, everyone just put pencils down and went, well, that's the end of that.
Yeah,
it's a completely different aesthetic. A photograph looks different to a CGI. Now, to the untrained eye, it might be hard to pinpoint what it is, but when they're doing market research, which every ad campaign does first, they'll show them all of these different variants and see which one the public responds to best. And based on that is the path they go down. So I'm currently pitching on a job which might be me or might be CGI, depending on what the outcome of the research is. It's going to be the same with AI. AI has a very clear aesthetic. It's a very clear, this is done with AI. We can tell it's done with AI because it has that look to it. And the images are great, but it's the same as the Instagram models. If you see another photograph of a girl wearing big clear glasses standing next to a neon blurry background shot at 1.2, it's that's what AI looks like. If you go and type in #Midjourney, you'll go and find 10,000 images that look identical. Yeah. Because the creativity isn't there. It's a great tool, but where's the creativity?
So it's a tool for photographers more than something perhaps to be worried about overly.
Exactly. I mean, like, I use AI quite a lot with my YouTube channel. All of my titles are AI generated. The description in every video, the text bit just below the video, that's AI generated. The thumbnail is AI generated, and sometimes the content is AI generated.
What?
And what this allows me to do is spend more time on the content. So say, for example, I've just done a video that's gone really well talking about things that beginner photographers never buy because they don't see the point in. I can go into chat GT, I don't know what it's called.
GPT.
The chat
I get
thing,
it the wrong way around.
And I can go, here's a YouTube title that's done really well. Can you give me 20 variations on this that would be good for photographers who are male aged 30 to 50, because that's my demographic. And they will come back with 20 ideas. Now, these ideas are never perfect. But what it does is it goes, oh, hang on, what if I'll go, right, take number 3, explore that idea further, give me 5 variations on this. And at some point, I'll come up with a really cool idea off the back of it. It's like having a meeting, but without having to tolerate small talk and people's egos and politics, because it just gives you a blunt answer.
Yeah.
The answer's never perfect, but it's always useful. If I spend 20 minutes writing that's 20 minutes, I would do 3 videos a week, there's an hour of my week gone. If I get AI bot to do it, it's 30 seconds. So I've suddenly gained an hour. You know, it's so easy just to bring this time back and spend it on what actually matters, which is the content.
So are you suggesting the script of the content can be AI generated, and then you come along and...
You can do that. I mean, I don't do the script itself because I can't read very well. I get the title. And the way I record my YouTube videos is I sit down, I look at the title, I press record, and I talk at the camera.
Yeah, I know.
And that's it. It's a one take, straight, just like stream of consciousness.
One take?
I would get far more views.
No, surely not, Scott.
Yeah, no, I do like jump cuts when I like cough or sneeze in between, but it's just one take.
Wow.
There's no like planning, retakes. I don't have time, as well as the other thing, because I am a full-time photographer as well. It's I come in one Saturday a month and I film the entire month's content in one go.
So there's no auto cue.
Then we edit it and upload it.
There's no great long script.
No, none of that.
It's a stream of consciousness.
Sometimes if it's like 5 things that, I will bullet point the 5 things under the title. I'll have it in a notebook, which I just clip onto the camera stand. I just sit down and record the whole lot. And I mean, they're actually rendering out at the moment because we did it this weekend. So yeah, currently rendering out 23 videos, which is the next like month's content.
You look to me a very natural YouTuber. Do you feel natural? Does being natural come naturally for you?
So this is a really strange one. So recently we had to bring staff in to the studio because the YouTube got bigger, the workshops got bigger, and my commercial career got bigger all at the same time. I was about to have some sort of like nervous breakdown because I was getting like over 300 emails a day.
Good Lord.
I was like, oh no, I can't cope with this.
Was that because of YouTube?
And then a mixture of things. It was just all directions. It's like brand endorsements and deals, like people wanting me to go do speaking things. And I was just like, I can't cope with this. It's too much. I brought staff in. But I can't film YouTube videos being natural if anyone else is in the building, which is why I do it on a Saturday. I come in by myself to film the YouTube videos. As soon as someone else is in the building, it looks like I'm reading off a script.
I know
like
exactly.
The reading ability of a 10-year-old.
Yeah, I can't do podcasts if somebody's tagging along with me, unless I'm interviewing them.
Yeah. I'm just too self-conscious.
Yeah. You do have to find that alone time for yourself.
Yes, and also I work in like a huge commercial building. It's too noisy for the rest of the time. There's always bangs and like hammers and bits and pieces going off. Like you wouldn't notice it normally, but when you're trying to record a video, it's too much.
Well, I've got something for you. There's an AI generator that can take out all bangs and what's in the background. Now I'll introduce you to it.
Wow, yes, I've been looking into these recently. There's some really good, like
very good. Yeah,
AI. I just. Like with AI, the more drudgery it can remove from life, the better everyone's work's going to be.
Well, I'll tell you this, Scott. 3 years ago, I was given this amazing, this is an interview about you, not me, I appreciate that, but if it helps, I was given this amazing collection of recordings, people that were recorded on an okay microphone, but the microphone was put in a really awkward place in the room. Really just as, I would imagine, just to capture their words, but not necessarily capture them as a radio interview. And for years I've had this box and I thought, oh God, that's going to take ages to even start to make that sound half decent. Along comes, it's almost like I've been waiting for it, one AI tool that takes their voice and makes them almost like studio interviews. It's quite incredible.
And it is just brilliant. And it also lowers the bar for entry.
Is that a good thing though?
I think so. Like I come from, like, despite me sounding very posh, I had elocution lessons at university because I realized I sounded like I was going to mug somebody most of the time.
Right.
And I couldn't afford a camera when I started. I borrowed a camera from my uncle for the longest time, for years, until I could afford £500 to buy one myself. But if the barrier to entry is lower, like if now the AI noise reduction in Lightroom means you can shoot on a Canon 450D that you can buy for £60, it means that everybody has equal opportunity to produce great work. All of a sudden, there's not this, like, you know, when I started in photography, you needed a Hasselblad to get decent digital images.
Sure, yeah.
And they cost £60,000. Now you can get a decent image for under £100. And I mean, really, the technology of the camera and the technique of the camera, it's so basic. There's 3 settings: shutter speed, aperture, ISO. Yeah. It's not like any camera is different to another camera. They're all the same thing. But if suddenly the image quality barrier is gone, anyone can do it. And then it really is just down to the creativity and the ideas and the concepts rather than who's got the biggest credit card.
Talking of tech, I get a nosebleed when I'm talking about tech, and I've always felt that I'm somehow not as clever as other photographers. Blindsided a bit, you might say, by other people's tech prowess. But with all your success, I was surprised to hear, and it's in a video of yours, that you're similar in some respects, not in terms of confidence with other photographers perhaps, but in terms of recognizing that you two also can't hack all the tech. I mean, there's one particular admission you make that if something is not working in Photoshop, you have to wait for a few days until your mate comes along and presses one button to change the settings.
Yeah, I mean, even on YouTube, if you look back through the videos, you notice my face has been overexposed for 3 months.
Right.
It's because there was one box in DaVinci Resolve that wasn't checked correctly, so it was exporting it. It looked fine in DaVinci.
Yeah.
And the color profile somewhere was wrong. And everyone was like, you need to fix that. I'm like, yeah, but I don't know how, so I'm going to have to wait. Yeah. And I'm just like, it's better to do a bad job than no job. So we'll just put out the overexposed videos. And of course, the overexposed videos are always the ones that go viral.
Yeah.
You know, whenever there's like a problem in a video where you're like, oh, that's not very good, it always goes viral. And then you produce this beautiful footage and like no one watches it. But yeah, like my technical ability is exclusively in lighting. But anything else, like the amount of times on set, my camera stops working. I'll just hand it to an assistant. I'm like, broke. He's like, no, mate, the battery's flat. Like, oh, okay. Can you change that for me? Or like, I've suddenly set it onto self-timer mode. I press the button, then 10 seconds later, the shutter fires. And like, I've broken this one as well.
That's me.
The camera.
I like that idea, though. Just hand it to somebody and say, broke. And see.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the great things. It's like when you're starting out, you have to be able to do everything yourself, and it's terrifying. Yeah. And as soon as the jobs get big, all you have to do is go, this is the moment we press the button. It's like, it's very liberating going, it doesn't matter that I don't know how this works or what it is. Somebody else in the room will know how to make it work.
I'm not sure. 51,000 subscribers you have at the moment. As I'm reading this, it's going up, of course, day by day. What the success, where the line is where you become a successful YouTuber, is there a particular numeric? Is there a metric?
I think if I can reach like 100,000 subscribers with such a niche subject matter, I'd be happy.
Just finally, it's a question
Yes.
I ask so many people, and I know you'll have an answer for it. Pressure on. I asked them what their why is, and your why has changed quite dramatically across the years. And I'm intrigued to know what drives you, what will drive you forward. You found something you're extremely good at. You found 2 things, YouTube and this wonderful style you have for your food photography. But what drives you? What's going to keep driving you?
I don't know is the answer. There is something driving me, and it's always been this way. I was a violinist, I was a cyclist, and whatever I've done, it's always been, we'll get as good as we can. There's never been like a limit on what I thought I could achieve. It's always just been, we'll just keep doing it because the alternative is getting a real job. And like that, I guess that's probably my why is I don't want a job. No matter how hard and horrific it is doing what I'm doing at any given time, it's like, I just don't want to go and get a real job. I'm definitely one of those people who works to get away from something rather than towards something. So rather than going, I want to make £1 million, it's like that. I have no interest in that. But I definitely want to make sure I don't have to go to a job.
My thanks to Scott Chathinio, and that, at the end, is a sentiment I dare say many, many, many people feel. I don't want to work, I don't want a job. Whatever you do in life, if you can enjoy it, that's the ultimate goal, isn't it? I will. He runs online workshops, and and how he makes his food pictures, and is a slightly more commercial guest this week, which is great. We're sort of weaving around with all different types of guests that we've had of late, and I want to look for some explorers, not necessarily photographers, explorers. Doubtless they'll have some sort of camera with them. I will leave links to Scott on the show page, which has now a formal share page link as well. Share page, Neil? What's a share page? Sounds a little bit stocks. No, it's not stocks and shares. I had this epiphany in the shower on Tuesday morning, for which I will be receiving treatment, I'm sure. You'll remember that I went to the podcast show in London and I spoke with a PR guru. Don't you love that phrase? PR guru. Only somebody in PR could invent a phrase that makes them sound like an all-knowing deity. I half expect a PR guru to somehow be in, well, a form of levitation, dressed in their saffron robe, enveloped in a haze of lightly smouldering orbs. Anyway, the two gurus I met both suggested that I mobilise my other listener as my greatest ally in the challenge not to have this podcast as a walker and photographer's sort of best-kept secret. They both said to me, make it easy for your friends, and they did use the word, well, one of them definitely used the word friends, make it easy for your friends to be able to share the news of your show, otherwise it may fizzle. I thought, don't tell me it's going to fizzle, I'm rather enjoying it, thank you very much, if it's all the same with you. But I said, oh, well, yes, I do share already, oh fine deity from the land of all-knowing product placement. They can go to the show page and copy-paste the URL into their Facebooks and Twitter profiles and so on. And I got blinked back at. But use language not of URLs, said the deity. Think more like Edward de Bono. Simplicity, child, simplicity. As another orb appeared from beneath where they were floating. So I've been sat on this for a week or so. And I thought, Tuesday morning in the shower, share page. Sounds like a show page, but it's a share page. I liked it. It's all about sharing. Sharing a link is all very well, but sometimes you need a line to say what the show is about as well. And I felt like I was giving you too much homework, saying, go copy that, post it in your Twitter or your Facebook and write a few words. No, that's not a fair side of the bargain at all. So I thought equally a line of text that I will write each week to sum up the show so that when you are sharing, it makes sense why you might be sharing it with your friends. So on the show page, there is a little link there which you can copy paste. It has the link, which I know you could take from the URL above it, but PR guru said it wasn't a good idea. So there'll be the link there and then a line of text which makes it easy to share. And if you could do that, I would be so thankful because it does grow our community. And in the end, that makes the podcast grow and gives us legs to do far more in the future and not fizzle, as the PR guru said. Today's show page, episode 383, is on our website now, photowalk.show. Lots of links and some films to stuff what we've been talking about. If you look at your app, you'll find a link there for the show page, which will take you to the share bit as well. If you'd like to talk a little bit more over the weekend and walk with me, well, the extra mile is now out. We talk about the book, The Weights We Carry. We hear why photographing in the middle of the night on the plains of Texas carries a slight risk of a wild boar attack. And we talk about starting a new life in France. You can become an extra miler and support the show by visiting the website photowalk.show. I'm helped behind the scenes so much by some people in particular that I want to thank personally. Neil Ford for attending to the IT worries of my life. Andrea Gilpin, our head of department on the Instagram and ideas floor. Emily Rainier keeps a watchful eye out in the Facebook group, along now with Kelly Mitchell. Our play-out song is from Paper Planes, and the song is called Midnight. It's a song to make our last few frames on the show together to. I'm going to try and find another man-made structure being devoured, consumed by nature. I've got 3, possibly 4 so far. I did make a photograph when I was coughing and spluttering with the flies and the stuff in my mouth for breakfast. It's still there. Look, you can hear it for breakfast. That wasn't me making that up then. That's true. That's true. Hold on. That's better. Clear your throat, Neil. Come on. That's not very professional. This week's postscript to the show I thought should be about new starts. It fits well with my guest. I did find this, it's not quite right, but I found this. When something goes wrong in your life, just yell, plot twist, and move on. I like that concept a lot. It did sort of fit with thumping the pandemic on the nose, but then I found this one from Martin Luther King. And I think this is a great quote for the PS today, because a lot of what we do as creatives is built on, now faith can mean different things to different people, and you take it in the context that you wish to here. But I think a lot of what we do as creatives is built on personal faith. Faith in our abilities when the chips are down. Faith that our creations are a good idea or ideas. Faith that others might like our stuff, because that's not a crime. If it's a job change, a complete leap of faith. I mean, leap of faith is one of my favourite phrases in life. I'm a big believer in leaps of faith. And faith that sometimes the day ahead is it's just going to work out and introduce us to something that might well surprise us. Just like the letter right at the head of the show from Peter, when he decided to give his mojo demon a proper sideswipe. So this from Dr. King. Take the first step in faith. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step.
Don't wait for me, honey. Don't wait. 'Cause I'm always heading your way. And I know exactly what I'm looking for. And as we go, I'll keep running till I can no more. You'll always be the one I want at midnight. You'll always steal my breath away, yeah. You'll always be my heart and my life, every second, every day.
Here's another one of my man-made objects consumed by nature. Not quite such. Does this one count? It's a water butt. Don't touch the butt. Nemo reference there for film fans. Well, it doesn't look like it's been used by cattle for a long, long time. It's just on the edge of a slightly more open field. But this is still being devoured by nature, all these wild grasses. Let me get a picture. And let's see. Here we go. F4, 1/70th, 160 ISO. I'm going to move in a bit closer so that it really does show this being taken over by the vegetation around it. There we go. Another sketchbook.
The Photowalk is a Loading Zone production.